Good Tuesday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk here on the I Love CVille Network. We are live in Charlottesville, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world, presented by Yes Realty Partners. Find them online, yesrealtypartners.com. Keith Smith and Yonna Smith and their team, A-plus high-character individuals that will help you with this buying and selling process. So a lot to navigate here on January 18th, 2022. Certainly chopped in the markets as yields and rates are increasing, and we have three very intelligent individuals to help us navigate, four intelligent individuals to help us navigate this in the Urpís from Emergent Financial Services.
Are you talking about Judah?
I was actually talking about Keith, Judah, and Liza, and we also have the Urpís as well. Why don't we go to all the gentlemen on screen, guys? Nickolas Urpí, Alex Urpí, Xavier Urpí, Keith Smith, Judah Wickhauer is our director. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Jerry. Good morning.
Love you guys. I think we should first acknowledge and maybe embarrass him slightly because he's got a big heart. He's very generous in giving. Nickolas Urpí, bringing gifts to the studio this morning. I get in with a fantastic book I'm excited to read.
Thank you, Jerry.
From Nickolas Urpí, the author himself.
Yes.
And opera glasses for Keith Smith.
You're an author?
Yes, I am.
So is Alex.
Really? They got big words in it?
Yes. A lot of big words in it.
We do write with big
Fire.
Fire.
Rock.
Does it have more than three letters in it?
Oh, yeah.
More than two syllables?
Some of them have big words in them.
So you can tell this is going to be a lot of fun. We will navigate the crossroads of finance and housing and rates, how they are impacting both spaces quite a bit here in January. Keith Smith, though, you, the executive producer, where would you like to begin first, my friend?
Well, I think for the six people that don't know the Urpís, why don't we go ahead and do a quick introduction roundtable? Xavier, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you, Keith. So I'm Xavier. I work at Emergent Financial Service. I'm a partner with my three sons, so all four of us are partners, and we manage assets for both individuals and institutions, and we just have a lot of fun doing that, and we just enjoy making people's lives a little easier. And I always tell clients the reason we do this is so that they can sleep and we don't, and there are those nights.
Has January been an indicator of those nights, or are you saying the long view?
Yeah. So we do sleep at night.
What does keep you up at night the most? What's the one thing that does? I know you were half joking, but what really does keep you up at night?
You've answered this before.
Yeah, I think I've answered it. Yeah. There's a lot of things that keep me up at night, but usually it's not anything having to do with work, which is interesting because I think the one thing about work, if you do what you say you do and it's what you promise to a certain respect, then there's nothing to worry about, right? I mean, the markets are, they go up, they go down, but the most important thing is if you are doing some work for a client and you're succeeding in achieving their goals, then nothing else matters.
That's my answer also. Mm-hmm. It's also the added component to it. It's what you love. Generally, the stuff that keeps me up at night is the other stuff.
Exactly.
Yep.
The other stuff. Alex.
Exactly. So I'm Alex. For those who haven't seen me,
I think we know you well. Yeah.
For those who haven't seen me on the show before, I'm also a partner at Emergent Financial Services. Also love doing what we do, working with people. For me, I love the idea of helping people achieve their goals, especially I have a particular fondness just for when I have young people come in and we're working with them and knowing that I'm getting them off on the right track so that they'll reach a point where they hit retirement and they're going to feel comfortable and secure in retirement because we're working on it way in advance. We're working on it early. So that's probably what I love. And then similarly, my philosophy is always when you're taking the risks that you said you would take is for me, in other words, if we have a client that's supposed to be having very little risk and they're having a great year, the market's up and they're up way more than the S&P 500, I'm sitting there saying that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. They're supposed to have a lower level of risk. So as long as you're doing what you've promised to do, you're going to be in good shape whether the market's up or down.
Well said. Nickolas Urpí, my friend.
I'm Nickolas Urpí. I'm the financial planner and CMO at Emergent Financial Services. I was just going to give a compliment to Alex. I was going to say the funny thing is he talks about people coming in, young people coming in. And the funny thing is I can always hear, because if I'm not in on the meeting, you can just hear as like they're always nervous because it's something new, and it doesn't matter. Actually, it doesn't matter if they're young or not. Sometimes even some older people, like they'll come in not entirely sure what they're getting into because the whole stock and bond world is confusing to them. And Alex is very good at comforting them and being like, "It's okay." It's like this is all. He makes it simple. He makes it easy to understand. So it's actually, yeah. I mean, it's weird. Like I'm not used to I'm not used to complimenting Alex.
Well, I
but in this
appreciate
case, it's okay. It's all the more meaningful because of it's
I love the
We have
Urpí so
therapy. I was going to say, it's good to see the shrink tonight or something. Right?
yeah. I know.
And you're an excellent gift buyer.
That is true. I will admit that.
You know why you're an excellent gift buyer? Come on.
Because I listen.
That's exactly
He
right.
listens.
Because you said it before.
Because you listen, which kind of brings us full circle. Why what we all do at this table, we're so good at it, is we listen well, and you know, we have a passion and we have a love for this stuff. And one of the thinking for today's conversation, other than what the heck's going on that board
Yeah,
over there.
let's get to the news. Let's get to the hard stuff.
Flashing over there.
Well, what I wanted to say is there isn't that much difference between what you got. There's a direct connection between what you guys do and what we do, and of course, what's on this board over there is going to impact more than likely mortgage rates. So we could probably kick
Absolutely.
that off as a conversation. But I'll let you pick it up from there, Jerry.
So let's go. Let's get the gentleman in the mix. So we got tech feeling the heat with rates going up. We got housing feeling the heat with rates going up. Frankly speaking, we have all the markets feeling the
markets,
heat
pretty much.
with rates going up. The only potential, and I'm trying to find a silver lining here, gentlemen, the only potential positive of this could be maybe inflation getting a bit more in check, perhaps. But you guys are the experts. We'll have this. Let's first get a snapshot. Xavier, we'll start with you. And everybody, friendly conversation. Don't wait for me to prompt. What have we seen here 18 days into trading in 2022, Xavier?
Well, without any doubt, and it's just interesting that Keith mentioned the market, and the mortgage market is a market that is kind of, to a certain respect, lives on its own, right? But it's impacted both by what happens in the real world, meaning what happens in housing, in commercial, and then what happens with interest rates, all right, and then what happens to investors. So it's kind of a three-prong, right? And what do I mean by that? In other words, obviously, as interest rates go up, right, in the mortgage market, right, that has to impact the mortgage investor, right? But in addition to that, there's a thing called, what is the spread over treasuries? What do I mean by that? In other words, treasury is the risk-free rate, meaning that when you buy a treasury, you don't have to worry about anything other than the interest rate, right? When you buy anything other than a U.S. treasury, there's a certain amount of risk that is involved. If it's a corporation, it's the risk of the corporation. Therefore, I want a little bit more. You got to pay me a little bit more to take that risk. In the mortgage world, right, even though they're government-sponsored enterprises, the Fannie and the Freddie and the Ginnie, and the Ginnie is literally government guaranteed. You still have a situation where there's two risks there. One, you still have somewhat of a credit risk because Fannie and Freddie, even though they're government-sponsored enterprises, right, they're individuals, right? They're not part of the government. The government doesn't guarantee that. And second of all, there's a thing called prepayment risk. In other words, when you buy a mortgage-backed security, you think about if you buy a 30-year mortgage and you have a mortgage rate and you think that you're going to get a particular payment every single month, a cash flow every single month for 30 years, that's not the case. Why? Because sometimes people will move. After 3 or 4 years, they may move. They pay off their mortgage, or rates come down, they pay off their mortgage, or rates go up and you have a situation where now you're sitting there with a lower rate, right? So there's a risk involved there. Spreads in mortgages have been the tightest they've been in an extremely long time. And I think that's going to begin to change. And the reason it's going to change is because the Fed is going to stop buying mortgages in here, right? In a few months, they stop buying, period, everything. We're also talking about higher rates. So how this is going to impact the mortgage market is unknown in the sense of your mortgage market, Keith, all right? The difference is that, as you mentioned before, there's also a question of inventory, right? Sure. So the issue here is that certainly higher rates, which we'll see both because interest rates have increased and two, spreads will widen, will begin to impact the buyer in the sense that if a house is worth $500,000 and rates used to be 2.75%, and I had to pay X, and now I got an X plus something because interest rates went up. There may be some buyers that say, "Oops, I can no longer afford that house," right? So begin to
Downward pressure.
Exactly.
It's happening already in my world, particularly on the land trust and some of the affordable housing or some of the lower price points. A quarter point, an eighth of a point just kicks people out.
That's right.
They just get kicked out of it, and they're back there. There's an interesting correlation between, and I agree with you. Technically, the T-bill and the 30-year really isn't connected, but it is, whatever that means. But
They're definitely connected. They're definitely correlated.
they are, but but they aren't, right? You know, the T-bill can go up and down, and mortgage rates doesn't particularly have to equally go up. It seems to happen that way, but it doesn't have to happen.
Right.
Is that correct, gentlemen?
No,
or
that's
am I
true.
wrong?
Well, first of all, the T-bill rarely impacts mortgages, right? It's more the 10-year and the 30-year. But certainly the 10-year is the key rate for mortgage rates.
So there's a component of this, that what's going on over here, which is directly going to impact my side of the ledger, my side of the housing side of it is, as this T-bill rate goes up, guess what becomes more expensive? Development money, A&D money.
That's right.
Right? And I can tell you right now, some of the larger guys and the developers are starting to tamp things down a little bit because they're worried about where that goes. Because let's face it, you've got multi-million-dollar acquisition, you've got tens of millions of dollars of development. There's only a few entities out there that have the cash just to do it. Right.
Yeah.
So they're borrowing money, and they're typically tied to prime, and it's typically tied a point or two or a half a point or whatever it is. So as prime goes up and back and forth, their development money gets expensive. So when you're on 30, 40 million, $50 million a quarter point, it makes a huge difference.
So what you're saying, are those the developers, do they have loans where the rate changes every quarter?
He's talking about floating debt.
Yeah, floating debt, okay.
Floating
okay.
debt is what
Well,
it's
all
because this is
acquisition
not
and
gonna happen,
all acquisition and development loans, unless they've changed in the last couple of years, I'm not aware of, are tied to prime. As
Exactly.
prime goes up, your payment goes up. As prime goes down, your payment
Most
goes down.
commercials floating debt.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is what he's referencing. Alex, you were about to jump
So
in
it's interesting. So basically, it seems like you have both a headwind on the demand side, because as mortgage rates would go up, presumably, obviously, your demand for housing declines.
And on the supply side.
And on the supply side, because as interest rates go up, development then becomes curtailed. So the real question in terms of the equilibrium of the housing markets is which is the stronger
Well, then you got a third
force.
component to that is what inflation is doing to material costs, and then there's this whole labor question, which is a fourth corner.
It's a fourth part. So it's really, but those are also both on the supply side.
Got it.
Yeah.
In
And then you
terms
have
of that-
another one
so you
in
have-
that folks are, another KPI in that folks are itching big time to move here.
You mean on a local perspective?
Yeah, on a local perspective.
Which is the demand.
Yeah.
So you have two, so that's two opposite impacts on demand, right? So you have what pushes up demand is, I want to move there. What pushes down demand is, it's now more expensive to move there because of mortgage rates. And then the supply side, what's interesting is all three of those impacts push up the price of homes, because less supply pushes up price. Inflation of raw materials pushes up price, and inflation of labor cost pushes up price.
But everything we're talking about and everything we're predicting is a little further. It's going to affect the things down the road. I can tell you, I can't give you the specifics because we're not quite done yet, but we put a home on the market for north of high fours on it, and on Saturday, in the snowstorm, went under contract.
Wow.
This is the email we got over the weekend?
How
That's
many
awesome.
days was it on the market?
Pardon?
How many days was it? on the market?
Hours on the
I was
market.
trying to say hours.
Yeah, hours.
Well, you still have
what's
the
happening
millennials.
with that, it's taking longer to get you can get an offer on the table quicker. The thing that's taking time is getting it ratified and negotiating.
Were there showings?
Oh, yeah,
They were? Yonna did? In the snow?
in the snow.
Gosh, Yonna, you're watching. You're an absolutely amazing woman. In the snow.
Yeah, I said I'm watching football. I'm
Yeah.
You were watching,
Did I say that out loud?
Did she drive your truck?
This particular listing was
In the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. I know you can't say too much, but that's great news.
Yeah, so the component, that's what I just don't want to start freaking people out here
No, of course.
on stuff, but this is impacting, and I've always said, and I think an uptick in interest rates is going to be good for the market. It's going to be, for my side of the equation.
Do you think it's going to stabilize?
Just to calm things down.
Yeah, I mean, this is unsustainable.
Well, you still have a lot of demand, right? I mean, if you read what you sent us there, I mean,
I read it and forgot it already.
Well, so did I, but so I think there's something in there that
That's what keeps me up at night, by the way.
may apply to this, right? But if you
It's
think
pretty,
of,
though. It has pretty colors, right?
but when
Especially now that
I
I
was
was
looking at it last
thinking
night,
of
and I didn't see the colors off my phone.
No, it's
so
very pretty.
That's as I highlighted it this morning.
But the issue is that if millennials are buying their houses when they reach 33, right, and historically used to be 29 to 32.
28 to 32.
28 to 32, right? And they're getting there, then you still have a lot of millennials that are looking to buy homes.
Yeah.
And so, from that demand side, you still have it, right? The question is, how many will have to drop out because things are getting a little too expensive? But you're right. I mean, what we're talking about, especially with regard to interest rates,
That's
spreads,
long-term.
it's the end of 2022. Yeah. And then we'll see.
Yeah, I think into 20. It depends. We've called this on the show with you guys about inflation. I think inflation,
Well, inflation
is going to be the issue. It's the highest it's been for 40 years or
40
something
years,
like that. And it's going to be an impact. I think that's more of an impact than a slight uptick in mortgage rates. Personally,
Neil has this on Twitter. When, not if, rates go up. Neil Williamson, guys, Free Enterprise Forum president. When, not if, rates go up, the cost for producing Albemarle's 15% affordable housing mandate would push up prices on 85% of new housing, and then the existing home comps will increase up as well.
Yeah, he's first and foremost. I want to thank him because he's going to come join us on Friday with Ned Galloway to actually tackle these same topics. So thank you. I know we just had a little operation done, so thank you for agreeing to do that. It's the outward rubber band is just going to keep on going. What Neil is referring to is that Albemarle County is not helping turning this red tape into green tape. Then this pressure we're talking about, I'm a developer, right? And we're all going to develop, right? And we don't have, $100, $200, $300 million in cash to work with. I'm going to Jerry to borrow money. And now I'm projecting where that rate's going to be, and I'm looking at the market, and I'm looking at how much it's going to cost me for brain damage to do it in Albemarle County, and guess where I'm going to go? I'm going to go to Greene County. Right?
Go further out.
And I'm going to go to Louisa, or I'm going to go to Fulvana, or I'm going to go to the Tree Streets, or I'm going to go to Waynesboro, or that type of area, because the path is going to be so much quicker. Then this whole portion of taking years to get something done, which is the cost of money, right? Time is money.
Time is money.
On that end of it. So this stuff is that we're talking about is all long-term. The short-term in the next, I think it's more than the end of this year. I think we're looking at this through 2023, frankly. I think this lack of supply is going to be into 2023, but who knows?
I think you're 100% right. I think not only are we going to have the lack of the supply into 2023, but I think you're going to see the demand continue to uptick, and prices are going to keep going up even more. And I think we're going to be left with the scenario, Keith, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're the pro here, where Charlottesville and Albemarle County are going to become so unaffordable.
But it's always been that way.
Even more so.
Well, the number's just bigger, but it's always been that way. I've been doing
Cold call realtors knocking on doors.
Yeah, it was the same way in the 80s, in 87, and the early 90s. It's always been the cycle. The number's just bigger at this particular point in time. But look, at the end of the day, I got James Watson texting me.
And you got questions coming in. What's James saying over there? We love you, James Watson.
Yeah. I hooked him up on something with the federal government, and he's thanking me for it, and he wants me to talk about it, but I'm not going to.
He's Facebook messaging me right now.
Yeah.
And he's talking about a listing over here on Banbury Street, 2238 Banbury.
You and him are trying to get me into MLS jail. So.
Well, I got a question for Keith.
Sure.
So, because the funny thing is, I'm thinking so a house sells in hours, right?
Hours is a bit dramatic.
And also under contract versus closing.
Right. So let's say even if it's just 24 hours, people are making these decisions real quick. Are people settling for houses that they may not particularly
No.
That wouldn't. So they're not. So they're finding
I'm
their
not
perfect
saying-
house right off the bat.
No. What we're saying is they'll defer the decision. If they really can't, if they can't find what they want, look, not everybody's the same, right? Some people, I absolutely have to be in it. You're getting married. You want to move out of mom and dad's, not out of mom and dad's house. You know, there's a life decision you need to make.
Right.
So our counsel to you would be, look, this isn't your forever home. Let's just get you into a home. Let's start going in the right direction.
So they are settling, is the answer.
At that.
They're not buying their perfect home.
Yeah, right. So, but is that what they're looking for? Are they looking for a single, like the people you're connecting, are they, I guess my point is like, are you seeing a disconnect with the, like people want a certain thing, but they either can't afford it because prices have gone up, or they need to start with something smaller, so they're moving there
So
first?
it depends on the buyer profile.
Okay, gotcha.
Right, so it depends on what the buyer wants, right?
Right.
In your case, it might be slightly different.
Right.
In Dad and I's case, I don't have to move, so if I don't find exactly what I want, that's okay, I'll just wait.
Yeah.
Did you hear that, Mrs. Smith?
And that's also part of the issue.
That is part of the issue.
Yeah.
That is the part of the issue, because, you know, if we sell, where are we going to go?
Yeah.
But you know, as a counsel, right, as you
Right.
would counsel me, I would, in your particular situation, I would counsel you that let's get you into a townhome, let's get you into something that you can own,
Right.
something that you can manage, that fits your fiscal profile, right? Then in 3 or 4 years, you know, let's go ahead and look at moving up into something else.
Right. Gotcha.
Because you're going to have little people.
Yeah,
running
little
around.
people. Yeah.
Bill McChesney watching. I get postcards on my house all the time. Realtors making offers to sell my house. My home is not that outstanding. It has a good location, but it's not that great.
Yeah, and that's a tool. It's called farming in our industry, right? We particularly don't do it, you know, but we have relationships we've established over decades that kind of helps us with that. So,
Is it to the point where you have to be concerned about the unsustainability, or is this just the nature of being in a red hot location tied to the University of Virginia?
you know, define unsustainability.
I mean, you buy something, take my particular situation. You buy something not even 2 years ago, and it's appreciated 44%, and not even 2 years.
Yeah, that's what happened to
But
us.
the issue is it's only unsustainable if it can't go on. And if the underlying things which are making it occur keep being the case, then technically speaking, it is the same. Like, in other words, we see the same thing. We were seeing the same thing with the market last year. Like, you see these companies with 80 PE ratios, and you sit there and say, well, that's unsustainable. How can you be selling at 80 times what you're earning? But it's only unsustainable if what's causing it to happen is going to stop. But if you sit there and say there's nothing that would make it stop right now, then it's not necessarily unsustainable.
So let's turn it into your world, right? Here's X dollars, right? You're going to put it into the stock market. And I did it 2 months ago, and it was appreciating, and the stock market was going up. But I put it in now. I'm still going to make money. It's just not that much more. The percentage isn't going to be that great. Is that making sense? Did I totally make sense?
Which you don't, but the key is you don't know, right? You sit,
But I'm
you
not
sit
going
there.
to, more than likely, I'm not going to lose money.
No,
right?
more than likely. Over the long term, the market goes up. You're not going to.
And
You're
that's,
not losing your money.
You're not going to lose money.
You're not
What
losing
I'm
money,
what
bro.
I'm saying is,
it's Yona's money.
It's yours. money.
Yona's
I'm not allowed to have it.
Well, Yona's watching.
Oh, okay.
I'm not
Yeah.
allowed to
no.
have
What
it.
I'm saying is, you looked at these things and you say, well,
'Cause I
the
would've put
market
more than
is so
coffee.
high.
Yeah, okay.
The market is so high, what if it goes down, right? But there could be a lot more room to go up before it goes down.
So I ran a 20-year spreadsheet in our market, and we averaged roughly, depending on the location, right, between 3 and 5% year over year. That's it. Over 20 years, included the time of great unpleasantness. Thank you, Neil. Until now. So if you buy now, instead of double digits, it's single digits, like it's supposed to be, right?
Well, not only that, one of the key, it's what we tell people, in other words, you know, you sit there, you go, wow, the market is high, should I get in? And the point is, you got to be in it all the time, right? So in the case of housing, and I guess you would agree, because you just mentioned this, Keith, if you're looking to buy your perfect home, right? First of all, there's honest opinion, there's no such thing as
There's
a
no
perfect
such an
home,
animal.
right? But if you're
Speaking
looking
from
to buy
experience
a
there.
home that you say, okay, this is what I need because I expect to have X number of children or whatever it may be, right? The issue is you want to get into a small because you need to get into the real estate market because if you keep waiting and the real estate market's going up 20% per annum and the stock market goes up 10% per annum, you're falling further and further behind.
No
right?
doubt.
Absolutely.
So you need to go in there and say, okay, I am now in.
Especially if you're paying rent.
Absolutely. So I would say that is, for most people, it's like, okay, even if I buy something small right now, I'm there.
I will tell you what we're finding the sentiment in the market, particularly on the first-time home buyer.
Right.
The frustration is winding down a little bit, right? 6 months ago, 12 months ago, people just didn't want to put themselves through this multiple 20 offers and the emotional roller coaster on it. We're starting to see that change a little bit, and I think a little bit has to do with, interest rates are ticking up a little bit. But, my prediction for what it's worth, that somebody can bet me a bottle of something, I think we're going to be having this inventory crunch well through 2023.
So I'll throw this to you, Keith. We have UVA driving hires and new companies here. We have the Ivy corridor about to explode. We don't even know the impact the School of Data Science is going to have on Central Virginia.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't even know the impact that's going to have.
Well,
we don't even know the impact that code's going to have on Central Virginia.
We know what the impact it's going to have. It's
Well,
going to up.
Yeah.
It's
We hope, we think.
We know the direction.
We don't
know the level.
We don't
Yeah, we don't know the level.
It ain't going
We know
down.
the
Okay.
direction.
There's the dirt is so there is no more dirt developed in the city of Charlottesville.
That's exactly right.
Okay, there's such little dirt in Albemarle County to develop because of government red tape and policy. We have folks flooding to come here. Are we thinking that these increases in equity are going to continue at this magnitude that we've seen over the last 2 years? My home has gone up 44% in 21 months.
So just to put a ratio.
44%.
Just to put a ratio to it, we little bit of snow apocalypse or whatever it is, snowmageddon, whatever you want to call it. We didn't get a chance to do our Monday market monitor yesterday, but I had some numbers here. Current active and pending. Right, so active is homes that are active and pending that has gone on the in Albemarle County detached. Right, these are just I didn't factor in single family detached. The ratio is 3.75 to 1. So there's 63 active, and there was 236 that are currently in pending. That's a ratio of 3.75 to 1. So every one house that comes on, 3.75 are going off. Now that's a little bit out there. Fluvanna County, believe it or not, is also a 3 to 1 ratio. Greene is a 1 to 1, right? So that's kind of.
Is that considered normal? What's like a balanced market?
Historical average.
Yeah.
Historical average.
Where's the crystal?
70 to 90 days on market.
Where's the crystal ball? Right? I mean, look, it depends on who you talk to. It's like anything else, right? Personally, I believe in this market. When you're at a 90 days kind of DOM, to me that's a balanced market. Some people will tell you 120. So.
Or what are we currently at?
Oh,
8.
It depends on
9.
hours.
Yeah, DOM. No, like seriously.
It depends. Well, I can tell you in Albemarle County. Blah 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 blah. Help me out.
It's under 10 days on market. It's like flirting with 10 days on market in Albemarle County. I mean, literally, it's that slim.
It's actually 4 days.
Yeah, think about that.
Wow.
4 days. Wow.
That's to put into pending. That's not the close, right? I
Yeah.
didn't bring
Yep.
the sales end of it.
Wow.
So, how do we get to balance? If you have no labor to create new homes, if you have cost of goods astronomically expensive, if you have no dirt to build new homes, if you have rates increasing so developers don't want to build new homes, if you have government red tape that's keeping new homes from being constructed, and we haven't even seen the true millennial push of wanting to get into new home purchases.
Not yet.
And we have the University of Virginia expanding and creating new jobs and driving more companies here.
So that kind of rolls back into your wheelhouse, guys. So from my perspective anyway. So are you talking to first-time home buyers or folks that you're helping that are kind of trying to build a cash residual for a down payment? Or is that conversation happen at all?
I mean, in the financial planning, it has been a lot lately of managing expectations. In other words, looking at, sometimes people will come have a financial plan, and of course, as part of their goals for the financial plan is, I want to purchase my own home. And part of it is looking at it now and saying, we need to be cognizant of whether or not that's possible.
It
in this
depends. Of course,
situation.
it depends on the person.
obviously.
The
It depends
age
on their
of the person.
financial
Yes,
situation.
right.
But we're having more and more where what used to be, okay, yeah, this is doable if we massage this, is now, okay, you need to perhaps reconsider some of these goals or push them off into a longer time horizon. Correct me if
Yeah,
I'm
and
wrong.
it's also a function of, what's happening is people are paying an enormous amount in rent, right? So they look at it and say, I'm paying all this money in rent.
More
for
so than a
nothing.
mortgage.
Exactly. So they say, wait a minute, if I pay this amount or less in mortgage, I now have some equity, right? The issue, of course, is always the down payment. They're looking and saying, do I have enough for a down payment, right? And so,
And that's where I was going.
Or the inventory to buy.
Yeah.
And Nick, I'd love to jump you in on this because you're really at this point, right? You're at this point. You're going to get married soon. I'm pretty sure Dad's going to kick you out.
He's dead.
They already told you. Good.
I'm leaving.
Well done, Dad.
He didn't have to do much of a kick, but that's okay.
So what are we saying here? You're getting married to get out? Is that what we're doing?
No, I'm not going to say that, but
So you're there, man, right? So
Yeah.
you were there, and so what's your, the blessed day happens. You get married. What are you going to do next, Coach?
Well, you have a leg up.
I have a leg up because
Yeah.
my future wife has a home.
Yeah, he has a very big
has
leg
a
up.
townhome,
He's a
right?
lucky man.
Which is the difference, right?
So I'm getting married to get out of the house.
Yeah.
My future wife has a home.
Dude outkicked his coverage over there. Well done,
buddy.
Nicholas. Smart man. I love you.
yeah, and she's a smart woman too.
I
so I'm
know.
all these boxes I ticked
Yeah.
off. She can cook. All these
Well done,
things.
amigo.
Yeah, she's the best.
Except her choice in men.
That is actually
Nick is A+.
Wait. That's actually a fair comment because my mother the other day said, "You know, Elizabeth's so sweet. Why is she marrying you?"
No way.
Did Mom really say
She
that?
said that. She said that.
No way.
So my mother will publicly say this, that if, God forbid, there was ever an issue between my wife and I, she would take my wife and not take me.
Jesus.
My mom is the same, I'm sure.
It's a New York thing, right?
Yeah.
It's a New York thing.
She may be
I think
serious,
it's an us
though.
thing, to be fair.
My mother is serious.
I know she is.
I don't like you. I like her.
So what's the talk? We don't have to get personal if you don't want to.
No, that's fine.
What's the plan?
Well, I mean, the plan is to keep looking because the interesting thing is that one of the things that you have in mind when you do get married is the fact that little people will occur.
Sure.
Right, just through natural. I don't know how, but it happens. And
Well,
and,
Trouble here.
well, in either case,
You learn something new every day.
I know, right? Who knew?
Want me to draw pictures?
No, please don't.
that's terrifying.
That's awful. But the idea is like, these things will happen in the future. And what you want to start building is sort of like, you have this plan for what your life is going to look like. I mean, that's part of getting married, right? Is that like all of a sudden you are starting a new life together with the person you love and you're trying to create something. And so like, but the thing is the townhome doesn't always, it's not, again, we always talk about the American dream, right? The white picket fence. But there's something to be said for that because, I mean, Elizabeth has been in her townhome for a couple of years now. And so it's sort of like...
So she's sitting on equity.
Is it 2 years? Or, 4 years?
I don't know if she's comfortable with me saying it, so I won't
Okay,
say
got it,
anything.
got it.
But it's one of those things that, like, she's ready to take that next step. I'm ready. I've been living in a home with the yard and all that stuff. So, like, I guess
You like that?
I do
kind of-
like that. Now, at the same time, there's something to be said about the fact that there's not a lot to clean in the townhome. That's a lot smaller than our home.
Or that
is.
grass to cut.
But
So let's talk
grass.
numbers. Albemarle County, attached, right? Which
Attached,
is your
yeah.
duplex. Currently, there's 12 homes on the market,
Right.
Jeez.
right?
Think about that.
The
12
median,
homes.
the median sales price,
400. Wow.
$473,000.
Good
Now,
night.
Now, out of 12, 7 of them are new construction. So if you were to hit the market now, right, at a reasonable price, you're
Right.
really only competing against 4 homes,
Wow.
Dang.
right? Because new construction,
now-
you're just not going to compete.
When he
No, no,
goes
of
to
course
do the
not.
swap, let's say you're in a situation like that. You've been living in a townhome, and you go to do the swap now to a single family, like a non-attached.
Never sell that.
So you
No,
want
no.
to
Like, what's the price of this swap?
So you want to know what the ratio is for attached? 6.5 to 1. There's 12 and 77 pending. So I
And what's
think I
the
did the
median?
math right.
Wow.
What's the median price there? Like, what's this
As
swap?
as
Yeah.
far as pending goes, hold please. too many pages to go through. The median is 414, but I have to quantify it. It hasn't closed yet, so you don't really know if there's seller concessions or anything like that until the back end of it. But what I'm trying to coach you through is maybe there's enough revenue and enough equity there, enough cash there that you can cash out and kind of before the interest rate starts climbing.
Can I play devil's advocate to that?
Well, no, you don't have to because I'm on your side. Because because one of the things you hear is that like if we're talking about how rent is higher than mortgage, the first thing you do is how can I try to rent it? How do I keep the equity and make the difference?
Well, that's assuming you've got the 20% down payment because in order for you to compete against, look, the average.
He's not going to need 20% down payment to purchase another spot.
To compete, you do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that
and
was going to be my question.
I
was curious, what's the down payment that you need
So
today?
this is really simple. I got 2 deals I'm looking at. I'm representing a seller. You pointed your finger.
he's going to have the power of combined income for the next one.
I got that. But I am now the listing agent for a home. I have 2 offers side by side. One is 95% financing and one is 80%. Everything is equal except for that. And the problem with that is that sometimes you might not have to do an appraisal. If it's like if you can put down 30%, you don't have to get an appraisal. The path from closing typically is a little easier.
The higher the down payment.
Higher the down payment. So that would, if we were exact identical deals, same price, same everything, except for that one issue, our advice to our client would be to look at the one with the higher down payment.
So I was
going to say, have you noticed, given the fact that there's so much demand, have you noticed that there's more and more people saying, I'll put it, 30, 40, 50 or cash?
Yeah, so there's more cash, but not as much as everybody thinks. There's a stat in here that I sent you guys on it. I'm just telling you, if you want to make your offer strong, sometimes more down payment tips the scales.
What I say to that is come talk to Emergent Financial Services because you save that money, start saving now and you save all you can.
Well, that's what I was trying to tie in.
Right.
That's literally what I was trying to tie in.
Because you can do that. Go ahead.
No, go.
No, I was just going to say that's part of the thing we try to convince young people is it's not, you're starting to work. It's not the time to go out and spend. You start looking about how much you can save and how you can put aside money because you're going to need these things. Because one of the things about the financial plan is well, what do you want in the future? You want a house? Do you want, a dog or all these things that or even sometimes we talk about, hey, dogs are expensive. That. But my point is that even just we talk to retired people, we even talk to them about hobbies because you don't realize when you start how much a hobby costs. It's a lot of money, and sometimes so it's sort of you got a plan.
Except for biking. Biking's not expensive.
Well, in your case, no. For everyone else, it is. But just even gardening, it's a pretty penny to start a garden because even just the matter of building the garden, if you're going to do it yourself, that's money. So you need to start piecing things out and realizing that your future, the vision of what you want for your future is going to cost money because if it's valuable to you, it's valuable. And the way we exchange value in the modern world is money. So you have to start thinking about these things that you want and start preparing for them. And that's the whole point of having a financial plan is not sort of well, I'm not retired yet, therefore I don't need one. It's, hey, in the future, I will want to purchase X, Y, and Z, and I don't know how to plan or save for these items, right? Because you can't just I guess, kind of wing it. You can. It's harder, and it doesn't always work out. It means you're going to have to make sacrifices later on that you could have made earlier and that you would have been willing to make that would have gotten you where you wanted to.
Dude, I would sacrifice if I was in your shoes for the next 5 years, live in that townhome, build up ridiculous equity, and then go up the housing ladder. And then you got a commodity that's going to drive revenue that you can pass to your bambinos and utilize for retirement.
Yeah.
So a lot of that'll depend on where the appreciation bell curve goes.
I was just going to say,
right. So right now it's on the climbing end of it. It may level off. Right, on that end of it. So it really depends. These are so personal decisions.
Yeah.
But I do want to follow up one more question for
Sure.
you. See if you fit into the norm. Forget about it.
We don't have to use you as a case study.
I'm fine with it.
No,
This
He's
does
been
live in the
dying.
internet forever.
He has been dying to use me as a case study since he met me. So go ahead.
you mean a guinea pig?
Guinea pig.
No, it's. But if you were to do, I will keep these generic.
Okay.
If you're going to do this, right?
Right.
Would you? I think I heard it right. You would be looking more for a single-family detached with a backyard.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So last year, according to NAR's Jessica Luntz, who's a statistician, 88% of the buyers purchased in suburban, small town, or rural areas. This is up from 85%.
You and I highlighted the exact same sentence. 88% of buyers purchased in a suburban small town.
But that's up from 85 to 80. And the year before, I don't have the exact stat, but it was closer to 80 at that particular point. So we're constantly growing this whole movement from the townhome scenario. Again, buy, townhome, as Jerry said, wait a bunch of years, right? You're in it at the moment.
Right.
And then move out into Fluvanna County with us.
So Keith, I have a question for you. So from the perspective of a townhome, would you say a townhome is kind of the first buy of young people that are beginning to work and they just want their own little house? Do you also see a situation where retirees say, I'm done, I want something, but I no longer want the backyard, I no longer want the front yard, I just want to be able to walk in, close the door, and not worry about anything? Do they buy townhouses?
So I've been waiting to say this line for like 10 days. Maybe yes, maybe no.
Well, you got to talk warrantable on this situation.
I will get to that, but with the real buyer profiles, you're talking you and I, right?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't have a master bedroom on the main level, it ain't happening.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or not owner suite. Well, not even that's not right. A primary bedroom. That's
You don't
the
want to
problem.
climb stairs, when you get
Yeah.
older. Yeah.
And there's some neighborhoods with the HOA where you don't have to do the grass cutting anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
So there's a confusion with the attached definition, right? So attaches can be duplexes.
Or condos.
Or condos.
Yeah.
But mostly those particular units that fit our buyer profile are duplexes, right? One half and the other has a little bit of a yard to it. The HOA cuts it. There's several of them out in Crozet, Fluvanna County, I think is sold out on the end of it. But we're not buying a 3-story walk-up
No.
with the master bedroom on the upper level. My knees won't let it happen.
Yeah.
So would you say the profile, the typical, and I know each person's different, the typical profile of the older person who has the assets to downsize and the young person who hasn't bought a first home yet, they're looking for the first home, is typically two different types of homes, or are they competing for the same ones?
They are absolutely the same buyer.
Yeah.
The same buyer.
So
that's an issue, just the young person can't
It's screwed.
can't beat
It's
the
screwed.
assets
Yeah.
of the older person who's had a lifetime to accumulate.
100% true.
And this is why a little bit more of a down payment is helpful. Right? It gives you at least a fighting chance on that end of it versus not. I mean, I can't give you specifics, but this particular home that we were talking about, Nova buyer, exactly everything Jerry's been saying, this is exactly that buyer profile. Substantial amount of cash.
But that makes it very difficult for the young person trying to buy their first home to match that level of down payment. Because I mean, the older person could say, "Hey, I'm selling a home that I have fully paid off, and I can easily hit that 30% down payment." And the young person might be saying, "I haven't accumulated assets."
Or more. They might be able to pay the whole thing.
Yeah, they might be saying, "Hey, if you go 30, I'll go 40."
And then they got the
how do you-
401k, they got the Roth, and they got a deeper portfolio of stocks and equities.
Exactly. I mean, the young
So,
person hasn't had time to
Bring it
accumulate.
back to you guys. That's why it's so important to start this process or start talking to you guys as soon as possible to go ahead and do this. Again, you guys can coach them through that and educate them through the process. But if you tend to get into a townhome now that you can afford, right? And as Jerry said, you'll stay in it for 5 years. You'll build a little bit of equity.
I sacrificed for 7 years, and sacrifice is relative.
Right.
Okay, you have a roof, and you have air conditioning,
Exactly.
and you have
Yeah.
cable and water in a bathroom.
There you go. Done.
It's relative. But 7 years in a 1,200 square foot condo with a dog. 7 years, and I did not want that. I wanted
Yeah.
the backyard. But now that is an asset that's
Right.
being rented for $1,700 on next to nothing of monthly debt. That's what you should.
So did you buy
Seriously,
your
home.
you bought
I
your
got
new
it.
house 2 years ago?
I bought 2 years, March 28th, the one I'm in right now.
So the market wasn't as hot then.
The market,
than it
the
is
market
now.
was in the pooper because of COVID.
Right, okay,
So it
so-
was in March, right as COVID was starting, and people thought real estate and the world was going to collapse.
Except,
Okay.
Well, we did not. Yeah, but and that's one of the reasons we bought it. And then what happened was it went bananas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everybody wanted their little studio and say, I got to work from the house.
Exactly.
And I no longer.
And
can
people
work out
in
of it.
March of 2020 were afraid to go into strangers' homes.
Yes.
We were afraid to go in the grocery store. We were taking our clothes off in the garage and washing the groceries, remember?
No, I remember.
it's
yeah.
amazing how easy we forget.
Right? But you remember that?
I do.
Sure.
I do. Right.
You got the mail, you left it on the table, and you wouldn't touch
Massive
it for like
uncertainty,
days.
yeah,
Yeah, we have no
9
idea
days
what was
to-
happening.
No.
I mean, we were thinking then that the open houses were forever terminated. And now they're still happening.
And they're coming back, yeah.
And they're coming back. Michael Plecker, realtor, 2 new buyers this past year in their mid-20s purchased in Fontana at $500,000 plus. Sure. That's Mr. Fontana, Michael Plecker. Where were they from, Michael Plecker? Were they Nova or local? I'm curious of that. And he also says, this is not the same market as in 2002 through 2007. My home purchase in Manassas, Virginia in 2002 for $325K, sold in 2005 for $610K. That market was based on speculation, no doc loans, bad paper being sold and resold.
Correct.
This market doesn't have the financial crisis elements to it, so we will continue to see it rise. Well said, Michael Plecker.
Okay.
Absolutely,
Good point.
and that's why inventory will just be tight. You know, I think you're going to see there'll be a shot in the arm here because some of these new construction projects have been in the pipeline for years. You know, they'll get built. I'm not so sure a new project's going to be going into the pipeline at the rate that we need it
That we
to.
need.
100%. I mean,
Yeah.
we know Ryan's pulled out.
Yeah.
Ryan Holmes, the largest new construction developer, has pulled out of our market.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's mainly because of price points, right?
Because of the cost of dirt.
They operate at a certain price point in this market, in this marketplace, on that end of it. On so I'm trying to navigate this without getting myself into too much trouble.
You're doing a good job.
But we'll find out as my phone rings. but the reality of it is, yeah. So they're rubber banding out, right?
Yeah.
They're in Fluvanna County. They're kicking butt out in Fluvanna.
Shenandoah Valley.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happens, right? You push, as people get pushed out to be being unable to afford Charlottesville, Albemarle, now you hit the next level. It's like, I want to be moderately close, but I can't afford to live that close, so I know this far out. And the more people that do work from home, the less the transportation. Usually your flip side there is transportation cost, right? You sit there and say, I can't afford to live within 10 miles of Charlottesville. I'm going to go to 30 miles of Charlottesville. But then you have to calculate, okay, but now it costs me this much money to drive in there every day. But if you're not driving into town every day anymore,
We did that on
that's
Friday.
a change in calculation.
Yeah, and some of these areas are between 15 and 30% of your income is your driving.
Yeah.
And so somebody who's smart, like you guys, can take a look at that and say, okay, well, that's going to cost you X amount of dollars, right? So you can afford X amount of dollar more house. You can speak English.
Yes.
Yeah, more house at a closer area.
At a
Yeah.
closer area on that, but you know, it's very hard to convince people of that. They have to kind of live that process.
A lot coming. Go ahead. A lot coming in, and then
No,
I'll
it's
go
just
after.
it's showing people the numbers. It's running a full calculation. Just the issue is people see instant costs. In other words, here's my mortgage rate. If I live in this house, here's my mortgage rate. If I live in house B, they don't see secondary costs. What are all the other costs associated with living in house B that are not there in house A and that don't show up in the mortgage payment? Transportation costs. If you have more land, landscaping costs, unless you want to be
Taxes.
doing the whole thing, taxes depending where you're
Yeah.
located. So those are harder for people to see unless you don't talk to your financial advisor and they remind you to add all those things back in and say, well, here's the actual apples to apples comparison.
But if
It's
we're
also-
talking, I was gonna say, if you're gonna talk on a macro level, just like in the area though, those costs are gonna show up somewhere else too, and it's gonna be in some economic activity because people have less money that's disposable the things around them that some developers are betting they're going to spend their money on, they may not spend. Like they may, if you're in Fluvanna and Charlottesville is extremely expensive and prices going up, and you're living there and you don't want to make the commute, you may find something else to do. You're not going to go to the restaurants as often. You're not going to go. I mean, some of this may happen just as a result of your life situation, right? You start having kids, you may not go out as often. But the whole point is like, if we're creating a situation where people have less disposable income.
I disagree with that.
You really?
I
Okay.
really do.
Oh.
And I agree with you at a macro level, but at a micro level, I disagree with you. Take Fluvanna County, Lake Monticello, for example.
Right.
60, 70, depending on who you talk to, percent of Lake Monticello travels to work. So what they're doing is when they're in town, they're spending their money. And I just know this firsthand because some of the local businesses are not doing as well as they thought they would do because the money is going to Charlottesville, right? And
But you go into
Interesting.
work and then you just stay on. In other
Well,
words,
you just go
stay
food shopping.
You
Yeah,
go
go
food
grocery
shopping where
shopping
you
in
are.
Sigora.
Exactly.
And
You don't go back to Fluvanna to go food shopping.
And there's an interesting, I read an article from Neil early this morning, and I don't want to screw it up by misquoting it, but there was an analysis, I believe it was done in 2009, where they were talking about development in Albemarle County actually brings in more dollars, right? Because people are coming from, they're just forcing, not forcing, but people are coming in to spend money into Albemarle County. But he'll talk about that
Well, that's interesting.
on Friday.
The only thing I would say
I
is
probably
that,
screwed it up somehow.
and we always forget this, but time is also money, and we don't think about the time that we spend traveling. But
Opportunity
Keith-
costs.
Yeah, but Keith, I'm so you're. I mean, I remember working in the city and traveling
Oh, yeah.
from Brooklyn an hour and a half sometimes.
For how
That's
many
3
miles?
hours,
For how many miles?
20, 30 miles.
Yeah.
I mean, that was nothing, right? And so that's 3 hours of your life that you spend traveling. Sometimes, people say, well, you could read. Well, there were times where you couldn't even open a book. Right,
Of course
to
not,
read.
because you were
So-
bouncing against
Exactly.
people.
So being in a car for, 30, 40, 50 minutes every single day at first doesn't seem like a lot, but eventually it's like, wow, it gets tired.
My wife, she worked at Blackstone,
Yeah.
was living in Massapequa,
Oh, wow.
was waking up at 4:30 in the morning
Yeah.
to drive, to take public transit, what?
LIR,
Yeah.
LIR, Long Island
Yeah.
Railroad.
Yeah, to go to Blackstone.
Yeah, sure.
And that's what she had to do.
Yeah.
She
And-
said it was a second job.
And
Transport,
literally,
Yeah, absolutely.
literally bouncing
Yeah.
across people.
You got to drive to the train station, take that train, then take a subway, and then
That's
walk to work. I mean, that's a long process,
That's miserable.
4:30 in the morning. So more coming in. Plecker, the two, Michael Plecker, thank you for participating. The two people who were in their mid-20s that purchased in Fontana. Fontana's a great neighborhood on Pantops. They came from Nova, Northern Virginia, as predicted there.
I'm just curious of what field of work.
I actually asked him that. I said, I asked him with two questions, and your chemistry's working. Did they sell a home in Nova, cash out, or are they maintaining their gig in Nova and working from here?
Yeah, so at that age point.
They probably didn't sell their home.
Probably didn't sell.
So I think they're probably maintaining their Nova gig and working from an ISP here.
Or
They got a tech job here.
one of the tech jobs that we've been
Yeah,
talking
could be that as well. Kevin Higgins, for you, Keith,
Yeah.
how do you think the expanding work-at-home movement will impact the future of large commercial buildings already built? Is that Charlottesville's opportunity to recondition those buildings into rental communities? Good question.
Yeah, it is.
It's a great question, and I think the answer to that is yes. I think you're going to start seeing that. It becomes a zoning issue, right? Because it depends on what the commercial parcel is zoned for on that end of it. So, it would be very parcel specific. But yeah, you're 100% right. And all these yellow pads I have, and there's a stat in here I was going to quote that, the buyer profile is changing. People are working from home. You've called this, Jerry. We've called this that this is going to be the new normal. This is going to be the new hybrid that folks are not going into the offices. So logically, if the commercial parcel is right, it could increase inventory, and I think that's what he's asking.
Neil is saying this, a couple things from Neil Williamson. I love when you're watching on Twitter, Neil. From NAR, National Association of Realtors. Buyer profile, first-time buyers made up 34% of all home buyers, an increase from last year's 31%.
Yep.
The typical first-time buyer was 33 years old, while the typical repeat buyer age rose to an all-time high of 56 years old. That's Neil Williamson. Good stuff from Neo, and he's also dropping a lot of knowledge from the Free Enterprise Forum on Twitter. Please check that out. More comments coming in on Facebook, and this one's for the Urpís. Does the market volatility impact your clients' confidence in the real estate market?
That's an interesting question. So I mean, again, it all depends on the specific client. I mean, there's a majority of clients that aren't really looking for real estate, right? So I think volatility. It's and I'm trying to filter through all the clients, and it's interesting because I would say that about 80 to 85% of the clients don't even pay attention to the stock market. Mm-hmm. They've got their job, they got their work life, whatever, and they do what they have to do, and they don't even think about that. So volatility, as far as they're concerned, doesn't really exist. At the end of the year or twice a year, they come see us, they see how they're doing, mm-hmm. their plan is going accordingly, and they're fine to go. Mm-hmm. So, and then there's always the 15% that, they're looking at the markets every single day, and they'll phone call you like, sometimes every 10 minutes to say, did I make money or lose money today? But from a perspective of real estate,
I can add to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can add to that. 40, 50, 60 transactions. I can't honestly remember the last time I had a conversation with a buyer or seller about the stock market. It just doesn't happen. Yeah. It's interesting because I was thinking about this on the way in this morning. The average buyer and seller, I mean, maybe somebody else can chime in and contradict me on that, but on our end of it, very rarely it's the buy and hold. Get in the stock market, get out. And
I would say as you're climbing price points, you have a buyer that's more in tune or sophisticated with market volatility.
Well, it depends on what you put a dollar point. We do some big dollar stuff and small dollar. At the end of the day, they really don't. In the commercial field, on my commercial buys, absolutely. Yeah. Every mm-hmm. single one of them is connected to somehow or another to that. But in the residential side, typically not.
Really?
It's just been, absolutely, yeah.
That as you're getting into the 500K plus 700K?
Our average sale was north of that last year, and I can't tell you we had a single
Mm-hmm.
conversation about it.
Okay.
You know what it is, Jerry? People like to compartmentalize. And so there's the stock market bundle, and then there's the real estate bundle, and then there's let's talk about politics and the economy as a whole. And while we are all aware on a very subconscious level that these are all connected to each other, when you're going to have, especially like when we have people that sit down for the financial plans, they don't see the connection. Like sometimes we have to bring up like, you need to give us more information about this and this, like the price of your home and stuff, because it doesn't occur to people right off the way that their home is an investment. Right, so like mm-hmm. we have to tell. So sometimes people are like, should I invest in real estate? And sometimes they're like, well, most of your equity is in your house. Like that is your investment. That's the largest stock, if you want to look at it that way. Like it's the largest thing you'll ever own. Position. That's an investment. It's your largest, exactly, your position. So it's interesting because people will be like, well, that's your home, and to a certain respect, they're right in the sense that your home has a value. It's the shelter, it's the heat, it's all that. But at the same time, it's still an investment, but people don't necessarily always see it that way at first. They're going to be like, I'm buying this residence. This is my home. This is where I'm going to, raise my kids and have a dog and do all these things and, cook lasagna. And then there's your stock market portfolio where you don't do any of those things. So it's different because they're like, this is my bundle of cash that I'm saving for my retirement. And then this is the house that I'm using and living in currently right now today. So it becomes it's a disconnect across time, and it's a disconnect because you're trying to compartmentalize them so that you can understand them piecemeal.
I've been doing this since 1987 and fair number of transactions. It's 99% of the time it's emotional, right? The purchase or the sale is mm-hmm. it's an emotional purchase and sale. It's typically, matter of fact, sometimes you have to have the conversation, as Nick is saying, well, hold the time out. We got to go over numbers. We got to go over what
mm-hmm.
your net's going to be. Oh, okay. And so some people, it's time to make the move, and this is what they want to do. Mrs. Smith has done that. I have not.
You're a
And
social.
you-
I was going to say you're a social media guy. I've seen tons of posts about millennials sharing photos of themselves in front of their new home, saying, "I've bought a new home," doing the whole post thing. Look at me in front of my new home. Not a single one have I ever seen went on social media and said, "I opened up my Roth today."
Well said. That was a great comment right there. I like that.
Well
the,
done.
the other thing, go ahead.
No, first, you first.
No, the other thing I was going to say is, the introduction of target date funds was fabulous for most, for like the Fidelities of the world, the Schwabs of the world. And the reason being is that when you think about it, people buy a 401k, they have no idea what to do with it, and they say, well, if you're 20 and you're going to retire when you're, 65, therefore you need a target date fund that's 45 years from now, right? And they said, okay, and they just buy it. The issue, and so what happens is they never see anything. In other words, the target date fund is investing in multiple funds. Some go up, some go down.
They never see any
but
of
they don't
that.
see any of that. They
They
just
see
see,
one number.
okay, yeah, well, I made 4% this year, or 20%, or 13%. They don't even, I mean, half the time it's like they have no clue.
But Xavier,
It's amazing.
After this whole conversation, right? The reason I love doing the shows with you guys is because this is important, right?
Yes.
This is an important part of people's lives, that the fiscal side of it, that they either they're too, the average person trying to get a job, whatever, they're wrapped up in their puppy or their baby or whatever, and they don't do that. I'm speaking from experience, right? We just get wrapped up in trying to grow our business and doing all this kind of great stuff, and it took you guys to slow us down and say, no, you need to be doing this. And I said, okay, and here you go. And well, maybe
it's a major piece. Just think about it. I mean, if we're talking, what do we say now? 33 is the average
age.
is the age where people are buying a house. If you go into this market right now at 33, and you have not saved, and you're just saying, all right, I'm ready to go, ready to buy a house. We just talked about, you're at a major competitive disadvantage because a buyer of a
buy a
similar
house.
profile who is in their 60s is going to come and say, I can beat whatever down payment you can come up with.
Or the mid-20s Nova working from an ISP.
Exactly. If you opened up a Roth at 22 and have been putting money into that Roth IRA for 11 years, by the time you get to 33, right, you were in a much better position because you now have a nice little bundle.
But it'd be tough to pull that money out of the Roth to buy a house.
No,
without
it
some
is. First
serious
time-
cap gains.
No.
Is that wrong?
No,
Yes.
a Roth IRA, the beauty of a Roth IRA is not only can you pull contribution, anything you contribute to a Roth IRA, you can pull out anytime, no penalty, no tax.
Oh, there
In
you go.
addition, for a first-time home purchase, you can also tap your gains in the Roth IRA.
I stand corrected.
No penalty, no tax.
There you go.
So that's
so
the beauty of the
let's
Roth
say
IRA.
that again slowly.
So
That's good info.
Roth IRA, you're allowed to obviously to put $6,000 a year. The amount that you contribute to a Roth IRA, you can always pull out at any time without paying the 10% penalty and without paying any taxes on the money that you pull out. For a first-time home, after 5 years, you have to have this Roth IRA for 5 years. After 5 years, a first-time home purchase also counts as a qualified reason that you can not only pull out your contributions, you can pull out your gains from a Roth IRA and pay no 10% penalty and no taxes. The Roth IRA is basically designed for young people because it's designed
Savings account.
so that you can put money in, and if you need to pull it out before retirement for a major situation such as educational expenses or first-time home purchase, you can do so. That's the beauty of the Roth IRA. It's designed for this precise purpose.
Well, the biggest beauty is, remember, it grows tax-free.
It grows tax-free.
Because you paid taxes on it already.
Yeah.
So I don't want to read this whole paragraph from Jessica Luntz from NAR, but what the data is showing, the first home buyers are overcome rising home prices by patching together increased down payments through a diversity of down payment sources. It actually literally is talking about the Roth. It's
The Roth
talking
IRA.
about savings, down payment, family, friends, 401k loans. But it was interesting. Additionally, 38% of the student debt borrowers were able to use the pandemic, to pay down their student debt. So they were using, this.
What is the freeze is still on? The freeze, so they've frozen interest rate.
Interest.
interest payments on student loan debt, and I think now it's been extended till May. And the beauty is that this isn't just a freeze of you don't pay, but your interest accrues. Like
It's a
your
freeze.
interest is not accruing at all. So anything you pay down is going to straight principal, right? And is going to reduce the amount of interest you'll owe in the future.
So we
Are,
had to,
are the distributions including in your taxable income though?
No, for a
So
Roth IRA, no.
that's just the IRA, where the distributions are
the
included in your
traditional
taxable
IRA, so
income.
the traditional IRA, or
And then
the
you get cap
401k.
gains there.
So the issue with exactly.
So we went
the
back
issue
to-
with traditional IRA or 401k,
Okay, so I
because you
mixed them
mentioned
up.
401k loans that people are using.
Yeah.
The issue with traditional IRA or 401k, if you try to pull that money out, you're going to get hit.
That's
You're
why
gonna
I
get hit with
confuse
the
the
tax.
IRA with the
But
Roth
there's
IRA.
there's no cap gains. It comes in as income.
As income. So it's
On
not
your tax return.
That's
as your
right.
tax
Yeah.
return, which is
Okay.
kind of worse because the
Yeah.
long-term capital gains would be 15%. If
Well,
you're
the
pulling
assumption
out
is
of,
when you retire. Of course, the assumption is when you retire, you're in a lower tax
You had a
bracket.
lower
Because you don't
tax
pull
bracket.
you don't pull the gain, you don't pull out of, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you don't pull out of a Roth until you're 59 and a half or above because of the exposure from the pool.
No. So again, all of these have a 59 and a half. Traditional IRA, Roth IRA, 401k, or any of your work retirement plans, they usually have a 59 and a half is when you can pull money out without getting hit by a penalty, right? The traditional IRA and the 401k are still going to charge you, it's going to be taxable income.
Yeah.
If you pull money out because you saved on taxes when you put the money in. The Roth IRA is the reverse. In other words, when I put $6,000 into a Roth IRA,
already paid it.
I already paid taxes on that $6,000. I don't save anything. Therefore, when I pull it out at any time, that $6,000, I will never pay taxes or penalty on it. If I want to get the gain, so let's say I put in $6,000 and the stock market went up and now
Sure.
it's worth $8,000. To get those $2,000 in gains, I can't touch them until 59 and a half unless it is a qualified first-time home purchase, in which case I can also get those gains and I will pay no penalty and I will not pay taxes. The key is you have to have this Roth IRA for 5 years. So you can't open it, in
And
year
3 years
one,
later.
put a bunch of money in, market takes off, and then a year later pull it all out.
but if I'm in a situation, and this is great
Good
knowledge.
take there, Alex.
So I'm in a situation, I'm not ready to buy yet, whatever, I'm renting for another 5 years, I'm a young person, I've just started a job, get my Roth IRA, let it build up some money, then you can pull it out. How old has that rule been around? And can they change it?
The rule of what?
The first-time home buyer?
The first-time home buyer?
Has that always been?
That's been around for a while.
Yeah,
That
so
one,
long.
since
Yeah.
as long as I've been
Remember.
in the business.
So my thing with
It's
these
not
things,
new.
it's
Very
not new.
new,
My
yeah.
thing with these things is all of a sudden the rule got changed. So
Even if they change the rule on the first-time home being a qualified purchase, you would still, that would
The
only
original.
affect the earnings.
residual.
Yeah, it would only affect the earnings. You can still take out at any time the contributions that you have put in. So in other words, if you contribute let's say over the course of, let's say you managed to put your $6,000 a year and you put it in for 10 years. You've got $60,000 worth of contributions. So even if they change the rule and say that, you can't touch the earnings anymore, you've got 60 grand that you contributed that you can pull out any time with no questions asked. Like, you don't have to prove that it's a qualified use. You can pull out your contributions anytime, no taxes, no penalty.
Matthew on Twitter, Jerry's confusing the Roth with the Roth IRA. Touche, thank you for, you're right.
You mean confusing
Yeah.
the traditional
What-
IRA with the Roth IRA?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what and he's right. And then he adds, what if you pull before the 5-year marker?
So before the 5-year marker, you can still pull your contributions. Anything you put in, you can pull out. What you can't touch is the earnings. The earnings,
Any
then
gains.
you'll get a 10% penalty, and you'll have to pay taxes on them.
There you go.
So that how much it grew, you can't touch before the 5-year marker. But in other words, I can put in $6,000 in my Roth IRA today, and 10 days from now, I can say, I want the $6,000 back, and I can pull it out, and there's no questions, there's no problem at all. There's no issues. I can put in $6,000 today, and a year from now, I can take out the $6,000, no questions asked. What you can't take out is the gains.
So the follow-up on Twitter, how many are seeing first-time home buyers purchase with a down payment from an account like this?
I don't know the answer to that and how
Yeah, I
many
don't think
people
the
are
owner
using
knows
that. 'Cause it wouldn't be readily apparent where you're getting
So that's
the
a
money
Scott
from.
Morris question
Yeah.
for
Yeah, he-
tomorrow.
Yeah.
We don't, from our side of the equation.
see where the funds are.
We don't see where the funds. where the
Keep
funds
that
come.
question, Derek.
That is a good one.
That's a
Very
good question
question. But, I
question
mean,
to ask them where it's
I
coming
was
from.
gonna
And-
say, to go
I mean,
back to Keith's point.
it's you don't want to use it unless you have to. Right?
Yeah.
But I will
Exactly.
tell you, as a listing agent, right, and I'm looking at the other side, and it's a substantial cash they're putting into it, we can ask for proof of funds. We can say, well, hold it, this is a $400,000 purchase, and you're putting $250,000 or $200,000 cash down. I mean, we can, in the negotiation, say, we need proof of funds, that you actually have
this.
that 200,000.
Which says you've got your Roth IRA statement. and
Right,
you-
because now I'm looking at this, two deals, and one is a 95.5, and the other one is putting 50% cash down. If they really don't have the cash, then I've just hurt my client by missing this other opportunity.
So the two topics more, and then we'll head to close here on the show. Michael, for Nick, never sell a home when buying a new one if you don't have to, from a wealth building perspective.
Okay.
Agreed.
And that's coming from a realtor right
No,
there.
I do agree. Thank you, Michael.
And then this one from Neil, Albemarle County could expand the developmental area to help with this housing shortage and stabilizing of price points, which is a good point. 5% of Albemarle for residential and commercial development, only 5%, and not all that land is developable. To Diantha McKeel's point from Friday's show,
Yep.
we have shopping centers in Albemarle County that are completely empty.
Correct. That goes back to that zoning question then, and you have to go through that and infrastructure. I'm sure this conversation will come up on Friday.
Okay. Anything else you guys want to add as we close the show?
No, just-
I
No, I
do
think
want
we're
to read a quote about economics.
Ooh.
And,
I love economics
I love quotes, yeah.
Well, it's
Good ones out
economics,
there.
so it's from an article I read from Logan, and I will not say the last name because I'll mess it up. So Mother Economics, she is a serial killer and will leave clues on what the economy is doing. The trick is always looking at the right spot. Remember, always be the detective, not the troll. So this is what we're doing here. We're detecting, right? We're not
Exactly.
trolling. So, I thought that was interesting with my background when I was in the Marine Corps. Did a bunch of stuff, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
No,
it's true.
I
It's
mean,
true.
it's the value of thinking ahead.
Yeah.
In other words, sometimes it's tempting to be like, all right, I'm not going to buy a house for 10 years. I don't need to think about a house for 10 years. No. If you think ahead, you will put yourself in a better position to buy a house in 10 years. So you always need to be thinking ahead, even on long-term goals, and say, what do I need to do today to achieve my long-term goal tomorrow?
So it's interesting. The last thing that I'm starting to pivot now, we've been looking at week over weeks. I'm going back to my year over year analysis because that's what I want to start tracking on 2022.
Yeah.
What my year over year was looking like, what was 18 looking like, what was 19 looking like, because that's when interest rates were back in that 4+ range. And how
Which
is
is
the
so
market?
cheap.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about 4%, and we're talking about rates going from like high 2s to 4s.
But we called this, Jerry.
I know,
We
but-
knew that people would start thinking it was. We talked about this a year and a half ago, that this was going, my concern was this was going to be the norm. Everybody considered this was the norm, and it's not.
I mean, that condo I got was 6 1/8.
And you were happy to get
And I
it.
was so happy. Your first time was 18. Yours was
15 3/4.
15 3/4.
So I win.
Yeah, and I remember.
It's relative.
I mean, my father had his first mortgage was 6 1/4, and when I got 15 3/4, he said, "What are you crazy? What do you?" I said,
What do you
"It's
do?"
the
You have no other
market.
choice.
It's the market.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you're the lucky guy.
So you knew it was expensive,
Of course,
but you did it anyway, and why?
because I want to
You
get
had to.
I want to get into the market. Well, you want to buy your own house, but you got to get. I've always said that if you want to get into the real estate market, you got to buy something.
And when you sold it, did you make some money?
Yes.
Okay.
And let's face it, over the long term, I'm not even talking 10 years, 20 years, I'm talking 50 years, the single greatest growth
Wealth
in
builder.
wealth builder in among multiple generations is the ownership of real estate.
Yeah.
And
It is
I
the single biggest thing among multiple generations.
I bought mine in '88, had 18%. So I did what Jerry and Nick were talking about, is I actually held on to it as a rental. I had like 14 rentals.
I'm going to give it to Trey. Give it all to Trey. I'm not even going to sell it.
There you go. And it's called generational wealth building,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
You pass it along to your family members.
I don't know if you guys remember the original Superman,
I do.
but in the original
whoa,
Superman,
whoa, whoa, which one now?
So
No,
I'm
the
thinking not the
first.
original. I'm
Superman
thinking
one,
the first
Christopher
movie.
Reeve.
The
Oh,
first
the movie,
the
not
Christopher
the-
Reeve movie.
Okay, I went back to
You went back to the
show,
So
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
thinking
yeah.
the Christopher
Right?
Reeve
Yeah.
Superman movie. Lex Luthor's plan is always to make more land because he says in that movie, it's the one thing you cannot make more of.
That's true.
Is land.
Yeah.
I got
You
you
can
beat.
make more of anything else, but you cannot make more
You
land.
go back 3,000 years, you read Aristotle's Politics, the number one thing he talks about is land. He says owning real estate is
Yeah.
the best thing.
You can't
Back
make more
then.
of it.
Yeah.
Unless
It's a time of great
2008,
unpleasant-
time of great unpleasant. Just
Different
saying.
times.
That's short
Different
term.
times.
Short
Different
term.
times,
Different
though, right?
time.
Really? Okay.
Different times, though.
I know. No, it's not the same thing. I was just adding a little bit of
Context.
flavor to the conversation. But yeah, no, look, the truth is we went through that,
Right.
and we're doing very well.
And in reality, what was the number one thing in 2008? The number one thing to not do
Make
is
it
sell.
a piggy bank.
No, in other words, if you own land, right? If you owned land, the number one thing to do in 2008 when it crashes is don't sell it.
Well, you know
Well,
what
it's
the
like the
number
stock
one thing
market.
was to do in 2008 was to
Was
buy.
to buy it.
Yeah.
Was to buy it.
Was to buy.
It was to your point, utilizing the home as a piggy bank and pulling all the equity out.
Yeah, that
and
was
then you
just-
were screwed.
Yeah,
That's different.
look. I mean, these wonderful opera spyglasses could have bought $1 million house
Yeah.
back then. So,
Times have changed.
well, one of the stats in it we didn't get to, which is the difficulty of or the lending process is very different than what it was back then.
Final, you guys will like this. We'll close on this. This is from Steven. He goes, love the show and the roundtables like this. You guys have entertained us for over an hour. Thank you kindly for this information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you, Stephen.
Yes.
Judah Wickower keeps us on track. Keith Smith, Yes Realty Partners. Tomorrow, Wednesday, with Scott Morris.
Scott Morris, yeah. What's
Looking
up
forward to
Wednesday?
that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. We've already got a
I'm going
bunch
to be
of
watching that one.
questions for
Bunch
him
of questions,
on,
yeah.
on the stuff. And then on Friday, Neil and Ned. I'm looking forward to that.
Neil Williamson and Ned Galloway from Albemarle County Board of Supervisors. Today, y mañana, gentlemen.
Today, manana, we're going to have Dallas Turby
That's right.
from, what's the name?
I know Dallas
DNA
well.
power washing, yeah.
Say
Yeah.
that.
The
Say it.
power washing.
Power washing. He's going to join us on the show. Just talk about another local small business.
Not
Great
power
guy.
washing. He used soft washing today.
DNA soft washing.
DNA
DNA
soft
soft washing.
Because
that's
DNA
power washing
soft
can
wash.
actually damage your.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yeah.
DNA
Oh, yeah,
soft
yeah.
wash
Yeah.
is the
Soft
official
wash.
name. So he's going to join us, talk about his
Okay.
great little business.
Was it? It's my guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
So how did that work? How did you get my guy to come on your show? How did that work?
he's just so perfect.
He asked.
He's the closer.
He closed.
He asked the question.
That's it.
I mean, I think it went something like this. Would you like
Sometimes
to
she's
come on
exuberant.
our show and give exposure for your business?
That's exactly
Yeah, I
what I
said,
said.
well, sure. Yeah, we will do that.
Not everyone answers that way. Not everyone answers. I wish they
positioning,
would.
That's
right?
true.
They
That is
don't.
actually true.
Yeah, so
His father's the owner of the Lazy Parrot on Pantops.
nice.
Yeah, and his,
Which I
and
want to
his
go to one of these
wonderful
days.
wife works in radio.
Well, he did a great job on our home. So
He's fantastic. Dallas, you're awesome. Judah, thank you. Keith, Nickolas, Alex, and Xavier, I'm Jerry. This is Real Talk, presented by Yes Realty Partners. We will see you in 50 minutes on the I Love CVille show. Take care. Good job, Eagles.
Thank you.